Hey, welcome to the fourth episode. Oh, you know what? I didn't change the overlays. God damn it. Welcome to the fourth episode.
That's what you get.
Anything of interest. I was eager to jump on tonight. I made them and I forgot to import them. So while we're waiting for me to do that, I'm Brian. This is Jason, my co-host, and this is Anything of Interest, where we talk about literally anything that is interesting. What your definition of interesting is might be different than ours, but that's okay.
Quite interesting, but I was wondering if you saw the headline that just popped a few minutes ago or 3 hours ago. Chris Christopherson passed away.
Oh.
88 years old. 88. Oh, I'm just like,
sucks.
I'm like, shit, man. I didn't, God, some of the movies I've seen him in have just been epic. Yeah. Absolutely epic.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 88. The man lived a pretty hard life. I mean,
well, yeah. Who else just, what's her name? I'm ashamed that I don't remember.
Ma'am Dame.
Yes.
Or sorry, Dame.
Professor
Dame McGarnagle.
Dame McGarnagle.
Yeah, we are.
Hey, this is a good start to this week's show.
All right, everybody's dying.
There we go. Episode 24.4, September 29th, 2024. Welcome to Anything of Interest.
Yes.
So,
is there anything of interest going on?
It depends if we want to have another political episode. There's plenty of
there's always plenty of politics going on. It's
been
a real
shit show
this week.
It's like a toss-up. I know.
Well, the fun story out of Pittsburgh is what's his name? JD Vance got his ass tossed out of a restaurant in Pittsburgh.
Did he really?
Was like, the owner was like, "Get the fuck out of my restaurant."
Wait, let me guess. He tried ordering cat.
I don't know anything about that. But what was really after JD Vance's ass got tossed out, Walz and Kamala dropped a video of them going to that same restaurant and being welcomed and cheered and like talking to all the patrons. It's just so super.
Oh my God, that is
like, if you really think about it, this entire electoral run, if you really think about it, there's been only one or two policy drops the whole time. That's it. I mean, they've been campaigning. Everything's been about mental capacity, age, likability. It's like, I think Kamala dropped some info on a housing, policy she'd like to do. She's been and she did make a major immigration announcement, which, at least she's talking about.
She's
policy.
also on those lines. She's also putting out economic,
they're kind of trickling out, and I get it. I mean, you lose the attention of your audience when you get too cerebral. Now, I'm not saying you're all idiots. I'm just saying that sometimes. I know you are. I just think we
No, I didn't mean I was an idiot. I meant I'm saying that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, tomato.
I love you too.
And that's a funny thing about our politics. There was a really good piece I watched this week on what somebody did a story on what other countries think about our politics. Like, we're such an insular society, right? So it was really fun to watch someone talk about what other countries think about our politics, and there's the whether it's like the BBC or little independent shows or whatever. BBC's not a little show, but they tend to have a much more European kind of vantage point or a European idea of their kind of politics versus the strangeness of what they call politics in America is like very performative politics. That's there's very little to do with substance and a lot to do with charisma or
it reminds me way back in the day, in our day, back in high school, like the prom king and queen or what was the school the political fucking thing in school? student council, all that stuff was nothing but a popularity contest. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing. And, okay, here's the thing. So, oh my God, I said it. See, there's a reason that's my moniker there. So here's the thing.
What? I can't hear you. What?
Yeah. I don't think that Kamala Harris is the end-all be-all of perfect presidential candidates. Okay, I mean that remains to be seen. And I'm not even going to get into the whole argument of you got to support her, but it's just fucking obvious at this point.
Well, it's just it's the pursuant to what,
but pursuant to what you're talking about, right? Exactly. And she, in my opinion, she has the potential to not be an evil, but between the two, way lesser. Okay, that cannot be disputed. But pursuant to what you were talking about campaigning, it doesn't even pay for her really to campaign on policy because nobody wants to fucking hear it. Kind of like you said, nobody wants to hear it. And the other side, all they do is they it's back to the infantile toddler name calling. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't argue. You can't argue with crazy. You just can't do it. You can't have a legitimate argument, a debate. You're not going to be successful. You can't debate against crazy and say, I have some actual plans when the other person is... I'm mentally exhausted of it all.
Well, I think everybody is. And I think the previous conversations we've had about how Trump is not really Trump is not a person. Trump is a brand. Trump 100%. Is a brand for hate, misogyny, frustration, anger, fear.
But the fact is that you said, and I agree, everybody is exhausted, mentally exhausted, right, which should make this a slam dunk for Harris. But yet, here we are, and we're still under 10 points, spread. I mean, I still can't fucking believe it. I live it. We've been living it every day.
But I think the polls are finally showing the one weakness that they have. They report numbers based on definitive answers. So your hardcore Kamala people and your hardcore Trump people are always going to answer those questions. The majority of Americans that are polled simply don't want to be kind of bothered by anything other than their own mindset of what they want to do. So they just call themselves undecided. But they don't call themselves undecided because they're truly undecided. They simply don't want to talk about their opinions.
That's fair.
To like a demographic system.
That's very fair. However, what I have read, everything leads me to believe that there is still a large enough subset of society that is indeed undecided. And when you present the two candidates, they say, oh, well, I don't like Trump because he stands for all this hate and blah, 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 blah. And he's, and Vance and everything and yada, yada, yada. But then they say, but Harris hasn't really presented a plan for anything and how she's going to do. And that's kind of my point about you can't argue with crazy. So it's two different rule books. So one guy is able to fucking talk complete nonsense, but that's not why they don't like him. And the other one is still beholden to like being an actual adult.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't get it.
The community demands the high road, whether you want to take it or not. But yet it doesn't demand the crazy person to be on that high road.
Exactly my point. Exactly my point.
Trump is far more entertaining. As a brand, he's very entertaining to people.
You are 100% correct. And as we have seen what has happened to our news sources over the past 8 years or so, they're a business like anything else, and they thrive on ratings. That's all it is.
I think once again we can find ourselves coming to the core of the dilemma, which is if you want to watch an amazing documentary on how we got here, go take a look at the series Mad Men, and it is a really great kind of storytelling process of that transition post World War II into that beginnings of the consumer era, and how these just performative stories and advertising, and I mean that whole little bit about the invention of the advertising for Kodak's carousel, you know, when he's giving that speech about how it reminds you of family and life, and
dude,
and so you're just like,
for those of you that don't know,
makes me think of, but that's amazing. You know?
For those of you that don't know, advertising is what I do for a living.
Earns him a paycheck.
So yeah, you're right. It is, you know, you can sell, you can make up a story about anything, no matter how banal or repugnant. You can fashion a story around it. And I've often, you know, there are talented people in the advertising industry, and there are shills, and a lot of people are shills because, you know, let's face it. I mean, I've been in plenty of creative reviews, presentations to clients for, you know, campaigns and whatnot. And I mean, you're selling toothbrushes, and like you said, it's like, it reminds you of family and better times and no, it's fucking not.
It reminds you of how fucking gross your teeth are. That's what it reminds you of. There
was an awesome movie in the 80s with Dudley Moore called Crazy People. Did you ever see it?
Yes.
So he was the premise of that movie,
former advertising exec, right?
He flipped out. He flipped out. So they sent him to a mental institution. Yeah. And basically, long story short, is he started doing advertising with.
Remember the one for Volvo?
Yeah.
We're ugly, but we'll keep you from dying.
Yeah, they're boxy, but they're good. You know? It was like one of them was X-Lax. It'll make you poop. You know, and it's just like, and it was and so all of the other patients, and him were coming out with these ads that were like award-winning ads because they dispensed with all of that bullshit and just told the fucking truth. Yeah. And it's interesting to me because we're still not quite telling the truth.
Well, we never have.
We're telling the truth, but only within our specific echo chamber, right?
To a certain degree, yeah. I mean, I think our echo chambers have become more insular because of social media.
I mean,
if you go back to as far as you need to go back, I mean, have we ever really told the truth?
No.
At the level of government, or kind of even the level of human existence?
No, we have not. But you know, my point is, again, like, I would love to hear the Harris campaign, or her own, you know, out of her own mouth, this guy's fucking crazy. He will plunge us into World War III. He doesn't give a shit about. I mean, seriously, tell it like it is. Stop fucking dancing around.
Well, and they dance around by using a viral process. So, you know, they go with calling them weird because it got picked up in the social media as a viral reference. And all the other medias will speak to it and say, well, this new campaign slogan sure has gone viral. Walls and Kamala calling everybody just, boy, these guys are just plain weird. Mind your own fucking business.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's genius. It's absolute genius that these battles are going on with virtually very little substance compared to, you know, I mean, you can't really compare.
I would say very little is generous.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really well, I mean, you know, it's painful because, like, you'll get into a conversation with someone about tariffs, and you can tell right away that people don't understand tariffs. It's a very complex approach to solving economic challenges, right? So when Trump goes on about talking about tariffs, you know it's painful for economists to, like, holy shit, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't impose tariffs. That's going to move everything over to the consumer. You're going to turn, you know, $20 coffee makers into $100 coffee makers. You know, that's not how tariffs work. You know, tariffs are punitive measures for methods of controlling economic issues outside of, like, normal control, right? Or outside of normal
and it's all trickle down, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, well, the trickle down theory will be a wonderful topic up for another night. But since we're kind of doing a political Sunday a little bit, I'm not really picking a side here because I don't really need to. It's not really going to be up to me. Where I live and where I reside, there's no way the state of California is going to be in Trump's corner under any miracle.
Well,
there's
same
no
thing
way
with Illinois.
he's not going to carry these electoral colleges.
No, same thing with Illinois. It doesn't matter. I could vote for him, and it wouldn't make a difference.
This cycle since 2016, 2020, and now the projections for 2024. What I thought was interesting is when they were looking at the diminishing vote that he's been getting from the national election versus the electoral college, right? So in 2016, he had actually lost by like between 3 and 4 million votes, but still won. Yeah. In 2020, he lost by 8 million votes, between 6 and 8 million votes, right? And now they're projecting, but he almost won, right? He almost won the electoral college. He was only off, I think, by 1 or 2 states. Yeah. And then they're projecting that he's going to lose by 11 to 12 million popular votes, right? But he still could win. So he could end up having this nation's most unpopular president in the history of the United States potentially winning because of the very outdated and antiquated electoral college system.
And that is I really think one of the cruxes of the problem is the electoral college. It's a fucking joke. The fact that we have to be this nervous because of that shitty fucking system is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What's interesting is our Constitution is specifically designed to solve this problem when it arises, right? The last time it was a problem was actually during the formation of the Constitution, when they were trying to figure out how to get all the colonies to get along, right? And they kind of used that as a system to protect the minority from the majority. That's what it was intended for at first, until you really dig deep into the history of it. You realize, no, it was designed to convince the minority of slave states and slave colonies, because I don't know if most people know this. There were already colonies that were looking to try to get rid of slavery. There were colonies that were very, like in the Northeast, they very much wanted slavery to be decided during the Declaration of Independence. It was a requirement for quite a few of them. But recognizing that they were in the minority, right, those that wanted to get rid of slavery, they were kind of pulled into the electoral college process within the Constitution as a way to protect themselves against slave colonies versus those that were leaning more towards anti-slavery, which then brought us to the period of Civil War, where the Electoral College specifically plunged us into the Civil War because the U.S. Supreme Court was not willing to solve the problem at the Supreme Court level, and we couldn't get the congressional leaders to agree on abolishing it. So a presidential order fundamentally abolished slavery in the midst of Civil War. The South would say things like, state rights is what I'm fighting for. I don't care about no slavery. Well, no, that's just your way of getting out of calling yourself a racist and a pretty horrible person for indentured servitude and putting people into chains, to work your fields. No matter what, if there are a lot of stories out there about a lot of anti-slavery people during the precursor of the Civil War, actively during the Civil War, and post-Civil War. It's never really, ever really stopped, right? So we've always had this Constitution designed specifically to solve this problem. And I would argue that we finally hit that era where we need to write an amendment to abolish the electoral system. And I got a couple reasons why. One, we're not a nomadic society anymore, in the sense that if you live in the Northeast, you travel to work like far away, and you work for a great period of time, either on a ship, a boat, on a railroad system, right? There was always this migratory pattern of work, right? Most people grow up and never leave their communities now. They grow up, they live, they work there and stay there and, age in place there, right? Very few people migrate unless they go into the military or they're miserable on the East Coast and they want the good weather, or they're miserable with the taxes and they want the cheaper living. That's really the only driving force behind that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a two-party system, and we need to recognize that we're stuck with a two-party system for the foreseeable future. We need to get rid of the Electoral College to protect us from the two-party system.
Yeah.
We're in this misery because of the two-party system. And getting rid of the Electoral College really changes the nature of politics because, if you look, I would vote for The Rock right now. He wouldn't even need a political party.
Oh my God, dude! I've been saying that for the past 2 years.
If you want to make this a contest of, if you want to make this a contest of popularity,
yeah,
right, then you get rid of the electoral system. Bureaucrats and politicians go crazy because they're like, well, wait a minute. If we actually elect people by the popular choice of the people, we don't stand a chance. There are so many more popular people, in the United States that would become president, without the electoral system. That's why there's no real urge or need for the Democrats or the Republicans to really get rid of it. Because the long game, they know the two-party system exists because of the Electoral College system. You get rid of that, you've got 100 people competing for popularity contest, right? Suddenly, you don't need more than 12 million votes to become president, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just pick the most popular person, and that person wins.
You can still require...
Not really. I mean, even at the state level, you can
still require, like, what? I don't know.
No, but that's the thing, right? The Constitution is not a political document. There's nothing political in the Constitution. It is a series of rules and framework for those that can qualify for the House, the Senate, the presidency, and the judiciary, right? That's what that document is there for. It doesn't say you have to be a member of a political party. You have to be here of a certain legal residence. You have to be of a certain age, right? So if you're a 52-year-old person who is getting 250 million likes on TikTok, you could be president if it was just a popular vote.
Yeah.
You could be. Absolutely. And that terrifies the political parties. They are never going to get rid of the Electoral College. They would rather have this drawn out fight.
Well, and to a point, I mean, you're right. To a point, I mean, realistically, it should be, the popular vote should be the deciding factor. To a point, though, that is a little terrifying because then you don't know who the fuck is going to end up as president. But look who the fuck we're dealing with now. I mean, maybe it's an electoral college. Maybe it's an electoral college to decide, the primaries, and then.
Yeah, but the primaries aren't constitutional either. See, that's the big.
Well, then what's your answer, Jason?
See, that's the big mystery to me.
Move to England.
Like remember when I think it might have been 2016. Recently when Biden stepped aside and Kamala Harris took over, there were all these people calling out, "Oh, this is unconstitutional. You can't." Do
I know. And
you're like, "Well, wait a minute. Politics
she's the vice president, right? If he's
not in the Constitution,
Well, no, Well, not only that, but if he's unfit to serve or to continue to serve.
Well, these votes were casted during the primary, and that's not constitutional. I'm like, well, wait a minute. The primaries are not constitutional either. All the primaries did at the state level was put together some rules and regulations so that the poor little states didn't have to create ballots with 10,000 people on them, right? Because if the qualifier constitutionally for a federal office is all you needed, the ballot would be 25 miles long.
Well, you could, you know what the easiest thing to do is? Top 5 people stay on the ballot after a certain point.
Well, no, but the state already solved that problem, right? You have to fill out paperwork. You have to gather signatures. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to pay a fee. You have to register. You have to do this.
I know, but you're saying
all these hurdles to have to leap over.
Yeah.
So the state's already guaranteeing you that.
But I'm saying
you have to be rich
with a simple amendment that says there will only be a maximum of 5 people running for the popular vote, or 4, or whatever the fuck you want.
But you can't do that in the Constitution because
Why?
that's a political solution.
What do you mean it's a political solution?
An amendment needs to refer to either an adaptive change or a set new rule. If you were to state as an amendment, a minimum of 5 people can run for presidency.
No, a maximum.
Or a maximum can run for presidency or whatever that federal office is. You're establishing a limitation that's within the political arena.
How is the electoral college not that?
It's not political. It's simply
what?
It's
okay,
not.
You've lost me.
Okay,
I'm not saying you're wrong, but you've lost me. I'm one of the
electoral college was written specifically to protect any minority from any majority.
But it functions solely and fully in the political arena. How could you say that's not a political tool?
But it doesn't function in the political arena at all at the time that it was written. At the time it was written in a way to make sure that no single minority group could ever be like taken over by another majority.
Okay, but now it does function within the political system.
Right,
and that's what amendments are for, is to make a change to the Constitution.
Well, the amendments are to make a change to the Constitution, as long as you can get, 3/4 of the states to vote.
So who's to say that you can't say we're going to popular vote, no more electoral college, and there can only be a maximum of 5 candidates?
But how do you define who those 5 candidates are allowed to be? How do you allow those 5
You
candidates?
go through the whole primary process as we have, and then the top
The primary is not in the Constitution, so now you got to write an amendment for primaries. You got to now write primaries.
You write a full amendment that covers all of that lays out the stipulation for all of this.
So you want an amendment that finally adds politics to the Constitution in clear terms.
Well, yes. Don't you think that would solve the situation that we're in now?
No, I think the chaos. I think Jefferson was right. I think anarchy is the best way to clean out the gutters and to clean out things and get people that really do have passion for government and passion for serving people.
So you're saying that we have to destroy America before we can fix it?
It's possible. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty insane that as a society, the youngest country in the world, which is us, we are the youngest country in the world.
Well, that's not technically true, but
sure it is.
No, there's plenty of countries that are 3 years old, and
like which?
I would have to ask my 13-year-old son because he is a master at that.
Yeah,
plenty of countries that have formed.
If you look up democracies, right? If you look up democracies, we're the youngest democratic country. We were the ones that actually established it, and it became the framework and the litmus for everybody.
For the sake of this organization, I'm not arguing. Conversation, I'm not arguing with you. There are countries that are younger than the United States,
but they're not democracies.
They don't apply to this conversation.
Correct. They're not democracies. For us to assume that we're not capable of revolution, we're not capable of civil war, is pretty short-sighted.
Extremely short-sighted, and
I think the problem is that when I don't speak of anarchy in the probably the more traditional sense of anarchy, I would describe it more as, look, if 10,000 people ran for president because they met the qualification, at least you can't hide behind a system and say, the popular person doesn't win anymore. It would solve that problem. The popular person would win. The problem then becomes, within the rules of the Constitution, if you're of a certain age, of a certain residency, of a certain this, right? If you meet those constitutional requirements to run for the job, the position of that federal position that's mandated in the Constitution, the most popular person should win. So I don't think we need an amendment for the Electoral College. I don't think we need an amendment to limit or minimize or maximize who can or can't run for politics.
I think we need to. I think the Electoral College needs to go. It does not apply.
Well, yeah,
in
that's
the
what I'm
modern
saying.
world.
I believe the Electoral College should go, but I don't believe we should amend it to the point where we then put limitations on how many people can run.
That's fine. You were saying, like, if you get rid of the Electoral College, then it's chaos and it won't work. Blah blah blah. So
well, I didn't say it wouldn't work. I just said it's chaos. I didn't say it wouldn't work. I just said it
okay. Well, clearly the Electoral College is not working, because when you lose a popular vote by
3, 6, and now maybe almost 11 million
tens
votes.
of millions of votes, and you still win, in my mind, that's a problem. When you have states at the bottom, I mean, let's face it, when you have states close to the bottom of the economic scale and what they contribute as a
social
whole
scale,
to the country,
economic scale, international scale,
yeah, exactly. Those are the states that are deciding the fate of the whole country. There's a problem with that.
Yeah,
I don't want fucking Mississippi to determine who the president is of the United States. No offense for those who live in Mississippi, but you should probably move.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? It's just not. It's tragic, and it's not fucking fair. Is what it is.
It's very unfair, and I think that the founders knew eventually it would come to a head. Whether or not they predicted the Civil War, and it is still suspect. Some say,
and like you said,
they didn't.
And like you said, you can 65% of the states in the union you could just toss out and not even include in the election, and it wouldn't change the outcome.
True. Yeah.
So how is that not a problem when you have seven states? When you have 7 states electing a president for 50, how is that not a problem?
Oh, it's a significant problem, but it's a generational problem that political parties are willing to take on, knowing that the Electoral College system guarantees them a 2-party system. Like, that's a guarantee because
so at this point, it's just gaming the fucking system.
Not only gaming the system, but actually perpetuating the electoral system in such a way that there's a secret hope that after this, that my suspicion is the secret hope is that the Republican Party will get their party back and things will go back to normal, where it's shifting more traditional, conservative, more traditional.
I think that's predicated on Trump losing.
I think it's predicated on this very election coming up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And hopefully they finally, realize, although the optimist in me says, I hope you're right. But the pessimist says there are so many fucking whack jobs now in the quote unquote Republican Party, which isn't really the Republican Party anymore. It's the fucking psycho party.
It's the
there's so many of them. How's it? I think it's going to take a lot longer than
it'll be a few generations. It'll be a few generations.
Yeah, exactly. So how long do we have to go through every 4 years this mental anguish, worrying that some psychotic fucking megalomaniac lunatic is gonna plunge the country into despair?
I mean, it's a human problem. It's not really a problem for me and you in like 30 or 40 years. It's not going to register in our
you're right. And if I didn't have kids, I probably wouldn't give a flying fuck anymore.
I have enough kids that my skin in the game is to allow them to make those mistakes on their own accord. And that's the thing. Those mistakes could be a little painful and cause some problems.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what though? When you and I are talking about this, and us and our kids, and probably their kids, hopefully, they shouldn't have to make those mistakes because they're not their mistakes. They're mistakes. They are mistakes made by others, and they have to suffer for them.
No, they inherit other people's mistakes. I agree with you on that. However, if they're not allowed to make their own mistakes, and if they're forced to be told or gaslit into believing, hey, you need to learn from my mistakes, Gen Alpha is going to look at you and go, fuck you and your mistakes. I don't give a shit about what you did. and what you think
I know, but
do.
I am assuming that our next generation is intelligent enough to see through the bullshit and the gaslighting, but they may still have to suffer for all the idiots that don't. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So just to brush it off and say, well, it's not my problem, and my kids they're gonna go through their lives just like we did and make mistakes and yada yada yada. But again, this whole point of this conversation tonight is the Electoral College and how fucking lopsided it is, and the fact that they may be able to, and their whole generation may make the right decision and yet still suffer for the outcome.
I have no doubt that the Gen Z and Gen Alpha generations will be the ones that establish the foundation for getting rid of the Electoral College system.
I kind of hold the same feeling, and I hope so. But our kids may still have to suffer for other people's short
yeah, but I mean that's a long laundry list of everything that can be kind of construed other than politic. I mean, climate change.
I totally get that.
All the mistakes.
And I totally get that. And if this wasn't such a, if the situation that we're in now with Trump wasn't such an absolute kick in the fucking nuts, I mean, 2016 was bad enough because, but he was somewhat of an unknown. Okay. So we can legitimately say, we didn't really truly know, even though we did. Anyone with a brain knows it, but you can almost forgive it by stating that he was an unknown. All right. He is no longer an unknown. Nobody can question what he is really about and what the implications can be if he ends up in the White House again. He said what he's going to do. Okay. So, the fact that I get it. I'm not saying everything is other than Trump. Everything is roses and
right. But it's a human problem.
I get it, but this is so far beyond. I mean, I don't think it is crazy or outlandish or tinfoil hat conspiracy theory to say that if he's elected again, America's done, as we know it.
It's possible. That could be very true.
It is. It's extremely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens on a global, and it's not just you and me and like, oh, we can't get our fucking Big Macs and our goddamn iPhones anymore. It's like, what happens on the global stage if America, the global police force, whether you agree with that or think it's good or bad, what happens when that goes away? Then what the fuck happens?
Well, that went away in 2016.
It's hanging by fingernails.
No, it went away in 2016 when Trump gave his okay to move the capital of Jerusalem in Israel. That set the very thing in motion that's going on in the Middle East right now. That was the very beginning.
That had nothing to do with what's going on in the Middle East. Those problems have been going on for
no. You're separating two things. I'm talking about when Trump gave the false impression to the right-wing parties of Israel, and they're pretty significantly severe.
I know they are.
And they're violent. They're way more violent than our right-wingers are.
I know they are.
Well, you have a right-wing government in place under Netanyahu, right? So that whole process started because Trump enabled that extremism. He enabled it by doing something.
I disagree. That was boiling over much further back than 2016.
Unfortunately,
the right wing in Israel is much older than
2016 was the beginning of the deconstruction of the international global order. What finally put the nail in the coffin was the absence of American leadership during COVID. The American global order narrative is gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
I disagree. I think it is still there, but it is hanging by a hair.
Give me one good example that it still exists.
Ukraine. Backing of Ukraine.
No, because that's been a complete fucking clusterfuck.
Well,
I mean, think about Ukraine, right?
Mhm.
America won't give them permission to end the war. They could end the war this year if they were given permission for the long-range ATACMS missiles. They know what to do with them. They know where all the weak spots are, and the Russians know that. But the Russians know.
I think we're talking about at a different level, and I'm not saying this to dismiss what you're saying.
No, there is
when
no
I
level.
say
there
when I
is
say
no global police force anymore. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
We don't even do it in our own hemisphere. We let Venezuela stay in chaos. The Cuba crisis has never been solved. It's not going to be solved because the global order doesn't exist anymore.
Right, but there is still the specter of the United States to deal with on the global stage. That's my point. It's not truly gone. I'm talking about like if America truly is gone off that stage because we are so embroiled in a civil war.
We're no longer in the African stage anymore. We have no play in Africa at all anymore.
Okay, well,
the entire Central African nations are now all authoritarian, and they all sponsor Wagner mercenaries.
Yeah,
we were kicked out of an African country. The French were kicked out of their African country.
Well, then basically you're making my point, because the fact that the globe the fact that we're not currently involved in World War III, although it can be argued how close we are, states that there is still something holding the world back. Okay. My point is that if he is elected again, we could find ourselves in a much, much more dire situation, like a truly dire situation.
I would say it's a mix, right? I think he started it in 2016. His lack of leadership during COVID.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that, but I would not. The only thing I'm arguing is that I don't think the nail has been put in the coffin yet. I think if he's elected again, that would be the nail in the coffin. That's just my opinion.
I look at so many failures over the course of 4 years because we don't feel like we have the global credit anymore. You know,
we certainly don't.
You know, our failure in Afghanistan, our fundamental failure in Iraq. We can't even solve the Haitian problem. The Cuban problem's still there. The Venezuelan problem is still there. Brazil's not a member of our market. It's a member of the BRICS market. You know, you've got so many examples of how our leadership in the global stage is just evaporated. It's just gone. It's not there anymore. You know, our only remaining caveat, our only remaining hammer that we have left is the one that you don't want to have to use all the time. And that's our military. That's all we've got left. I mean, we impose.
Okay, but that's my point. I'm saying that the notion of that still exists on the global stage. I'm talking about the complete breakdown of when the whole world can now say, okay, now we can truly do whatever the fuck we want with 0% chance of any recourse from America.
If you're the Houthis, you're already doing that.
Well, to a point, but not fully Hollywood style.
Do you truly think pre-2016, pre-COVID, pre-2016, that any organization like the Houthis would be getting away? What do you think Reagan would have done? Reagan did it in Tripoli.
I'm not arguing with what you're saying.
For the last 8 years, everyone is doing whatever they want. And we are not stopping anybody doing whatever they want.
I would argue up to a point.
Yeah, but see, where is that point exactly? Like, where's that threshold? Like, I see pure chaos.
The point is pretty fucking far on the horizon. I will admit that. But all I'm saying is that there is still a point somewhere, whatever that is.
I just don't see it anymore. I don't see our global presence anymore like it used to be. I would say our global presence is so. Well, I mean, our global presence is so diminished that we end up back in Southeast Asia, reforming old alliances that we walked away from, you know, late 80s, early 90s, because of the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? We thought that was the great victory, right? And, you know, it turned out to be, it wasn't that great of a victory because we allowed our global presence to diminish,
Mm-hmm.
because our global presence was a military-based presence.
Yeah.
So now that our international foreign markets are diminished, our currency is, it's okay, but it's not great. It does fine. Most people want to trade in dollars, but they're always looking for that alternative. And a lot of countries, they're like, oh, you're American. Whatever. No one cares. Right? Yeah. There's probably a handful of countries left in the world that still give us an amount of credit that we've earned. We may not deserve it right now, but we've earned, and maybe we haven't spent yet. I think like the Netherlands will always love America for what they did in World War II. They have very long memories.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, the Electoral College is to blame for what happened in 2016. 2016 was the beginning of the end, and the end occurred by 2020.
Okay, I agree fully with everything that you said, except for I don't think the end has occurred yet. We are dangerously close.
My final example of why I know it ended in January 6th of 2020 is because 10,000 MAGA idiots, barely a representation of the entirety of this country, right? Like 0.001%. Brought our entire federal government to a standstill. We're able to break into the Capitol, occupy it, and they had no idea how to respond. That's it. That's how countries die. We've seen it in the history books. We see it play out in documentaries. We see it played out in other countries that go through it. This country's global collateral and credit died January 6th, 2020. That is when we became a laughingstock. That is when our presence was grossly diminished to nothing more than our military response to problems and challenges outside of our global sphere of influence. We can't even control the Western Hemisphere anymore. If you can't enforce the Monroe Doctrine, you can't enforce a doctrine within the Western Hemisphere. Do you think someone like Xi Jinping is going to give a fuck about what your opinion is? Or Erdogan? Or Modi? Those guys rose to power due to our absence. That's how countries die, and they die if you look at your history, they die a lot.
No, I know they do.
They come and go.
Well, they always say every great empire lasts about 200 250 years, and guess what? We're there.
We're almost to our 300.
On that last point that you made, I'm going to choose not to answer because
it's 8:12 at night.
No, not because of that, because I don't have a good enough rebuttal, so I'm just going to
drink my wine.
I'm just going to sidestep that. I'm just going to sidestep that point, that cogent point that you made, and stick my middle finger up at you and say, you're a dummy head. That's what we do now in America. So
I'm going to wear my flag as a shirt, and I'm going to come up with these cool slogans.
Oh my God.
Talk about dog whistling and like virtual signaling. I mean, you know why the rallies don't have people wearing pictures of Trump with a target on his head at Kamala rallies? Because they have scruples.
Because they have brains.
Yeah, they don't need to do that. And people are like, well, why do MAGA people wear so much like grift all over them?
Because they're fucking idiots.
Well, no, they've been grifted. That's why they wear all that grift. I gotta go soon.
Hope nobody ever watches the show because we're both dead.
I know, right? How about that gold watch that he's grifting right now? Did you see the ad for the gold watch?
Oh God,
he's grifting?
He's such.
It literally has $30,000 worth of precious metal and gems in it, but he's selling it for $100,000.
Yeah,
it's like. It's an obvious skirt around the campaign.
I told you there are very few. We talked about this last time. There are very few categories that you fit in if you still back him. You are either truly ignorant, in which case I feel a little bad for you. You are willfully ignorant, in which case you can go fuck yourself. Or you truly are a racist piece of shit, in which case you can also go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.
You know?
That's so true.
I mean, there's really not many ways to split it. Like I said, you don't have to like Kamala Harris. You don't have to like government, but Jesus fucking Christ, man! On this time around, even more than 2016, if you can't make the right decision, or if you can't bite the bullet and vote for her, you get problems.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, yeah.
Oh, well, we did it.
We talked about politics again.
It was fun too, but it was around the idea of the Electoral College, which we hadn't really spent.
Yeah, and yes, and I think the takeaway of this episode is that we both agree 100% that it is a bullshit system. It's outdated and it serves no purpose in today's modern political landscape,
or its
other than
future
political landscape, other than to continue to game the system. It's fucking tragic, and I don't know that it's ever going to go away anytime soon. To your point, because both parties love it too much, because it keeps them, one of the two of them, in power, and better to fight against one rather than, to your point, fight against 10 or 20 or 100.
Yep, very true. Very true. Oh well, good night, everybody.
All right. Well, anyway, I mean, it's good conversation. The thing about politics is it's very hard to have an actual discourse. Now, I know obviously you and I both have the same views, similar views. So we're still part of the echo chamber on the one side, just like the echo chamber on the other side. But I think it is, you do have to have deeper conversations about stuff, more than just you versus me type of thing. And
I would agree with that.
And it's unfortunate that still a lot of people, you can't even have that conversation with people. I mean, I'm up for having an intelligent conversation about both parties with anybody that wants to have it. The problem is it's really difficult to find somebody on that side that can have an intelligent conversation. I mean, it's a fact.
Yeah, and most of them are intelligent enough to know that they'll still disagree with some of what we aspire towards, but they can't avoid the Trump problem, and that kind of pulls them back into our echo chamber, and that kind of scares people because they just they want to believe in something other than a left mainstream or a right mainstream conversation. And right now, in this particular time frame that we're in until after the November election, because let's face it, we all know it's coming. Even when Trump loses, he's going to litigate until January 6th.
Well, he can fucking litigate his fucking brains out.
And he's going to have the conspiracy trail up and running.
Whatever.
He's going to have, the crazies out there gunning for Biden, Kamala, and Walz. They're going to be out there, and they're going to listen to their great leader. And
then maybe this time they'll take him down. The government legally will take him down for good.
Hopefully. I mean, he's only got like 25 court cases right now, and he's a convicted felon.
Yeah, it's interesting though what you said about not being able to divorce yourself with the Trump problem and falling back into that echo chamber. There are a lot of prominent Republicans that have finally said enough is enough. We're backing
Harris. But that's only because they hate him so much that they want to try to get their party back.
You know what? If they are intelligent, if they have enough integrity to divorce themselves from him right now, as shallow as it may be, in my book, that says a lot. It really does.
Well, let's face it. I mean, if you get a vote of confidence from Dick Cheney, that's like getting a vote of confidence from Helter Skelter. I mean,
from Satan, right?
Yeah.
but you've got Liz Cheney, you've got Mitt Romney, you've got Kinzinger from Illinois, you've got, like a whole fucking slew, like I forgot what the number was, but a large group of retired generals and admirals. I mean, there is a massive amount of diehard Republicans, and I say Republicans, the old Republicans,
right,
that not only have said we are not backing Trump, but they've said we endorse Harris. That's a major thing. Okay.
And none of this mess would exist if we didn't have the Electoral College.
And back to the point, that is very true. Right. And I,
we would have had President Gore.
You know what? He invented the internet, so who knows what else he could have done.
Just saying. All right, where can we find this silly podcast?
All right, you can find us when we finally get some people actually listening at anything of interest _BWJB on YouTube, anything.of.interest on Threads and Instagram. We are not on the platform previously known as Twitter because it blows. And then podcasts. We will have podcast links up also because we know it's easier to listen to two idiots talk about shit when you're in the car
driving,
muting, instead of sitting down and actually watching this bullshit. So, there you go. Electoral College bad.
You cannot find the Gen X geezer anywhere I don't exist. Goodbye, everybody. Good night.
We will see you all next weekend.